Yeah, I'm out at Brooklyn. Now I'm down in Tribeca, right next to De Niro. But I'll be hood forever. I'm the new Sinatra. And since I made it here, I can make it anywhere. Yeah, they love me everywhere. I used to cop in Harlem. All of my Dominicanos right there up on Broadway. Brought me back to that McDonald's. Took it to my stash spot, 560 State Street. Catch me in the kitchen like a Simmons whipping pastry. Cruising down A Street, off-white Lexus. Driving so slow, but BK is from Texas. Me, I'm out that Bed-Stuy, home of that boy Biggie. Now I live on Billboard, and I brought my boys with me. Say what up to Tata, still sipping my ties. Sitting courtside, Knicks and Nets give me high five. Nigga, I be spiked out, I could trip a referee. Tell by my attitude that I most definitely from.
Basquiat was truly the king of the neo-expressionist movement in New York. I liked that he had repeating aspects in his work too. It wasn't like this is my one work and this is going to be a separate thing. He had his little sketches and thoughts that incorporated into his other pieces. So you could see that it was parts of him. It almost like his development and his development of his thoughts throughout these different pieces. And I really enjoyed that.
He started off as a graffiti artist, which I love. To get to see overall how he would be creating all these pieces of material. We saw a TV, we saw cigarette buzz, we saw a piano, keyboards, things everywhere. And then within that, pieces that he had created already that were hung up, that were everywhere. Just overall getting to see everything and go around this whole space of this gallery exhibit going on. It was just amazing to see who he was as an artist overall, from his sketches to his bigger pieces to the doors to the refrigerated hinges, and to get to see the progression, to hear the stories of other people.
I feel like the entirety of the museum was the piece, because I feel like we always talk about what he did, what he left, and not really what he'd been through or what did he go through while he was making each piece. So I feel like when you go there, you have to figure that out yourself. But you also had, like, you know, his sisters in different videos to like talk about his life in each certain rooms. And I thought that was a nice touch, because, you know, we still have a lot of unanswered questions, and, you know, his siblings and his family, you know, are able to answer those questions for us.
I feel like I've always heard about Basquiat. I've seen his pieces online, obviously. It never really had an impact on me the way that it did when we went to the gallery. And seeing how his work is his work. Like, you look at it and you know that he did it. You see the, what I call doodles. You see the doodles, you see the sketches, and, you know, just looking at one of them, you really don't have that high impact that you would when seeing how it looks all together. It's just so uniform. The same with his logo. Not in all of his pieces he had the crown, but seeing how often he used it and how he incorporated it into his work was really amazing to see.
Yeah, I feel like in a sense it's a lot of doing work in numbers, and kind of repeatedly doing the same thing will kind of trademark yourself as an artist, and I think that's something that he did. So maybe even incorporating some of that into our own work, maybe even incorporating a certain signature, I know artists do like a certain color palette or certain like style of line, or other like small elements to really tell, you know, their own art apart. But I feel like you can't really find that style, that color palette, that certain symbol that you're really drawn to or have meaning towards to, unless you're like constantly working, constantly producing art and kind of building a name for yourself.
Everything just spoke in its own way of what he was doing during his time.
One thing that I'll probably be taking away from this as far as inspiration for my own work is that things don't have to be that one single piece. And you can keep taking your repeating aspects, and it almost makes it more your own.
When going to the Whitney, there was one particular piece that really stuck out to me, and I noticed it kind of exactly as I walked in. But the sculpture that I'm talking about is called Ishkode, or Fire. It was created by Rebecca Belmore. She is an indigenous sculptor who resides in Canada, and she does a lot of social and political work about Native communities. Belmore describes her piece as it carrying an emptiness, which is the feeling that I automatically got when looking at the sculpture, because, you know, there's nothing inside the sleeping blanket. It's completely hollow, but yet it still stands. She was able to convey a feeling so heavily that I could feel it before having researched what that feeling was, and that was emptiness. And then to find out that a Native woman created this is really powerful in itself, because there aren't a lot of Native artists that get talked about or discussed about in modern or contemporary art. And the fact that she's a woman as well, and she was able to convey a feeling so heavily that I could feel it before having researched what that feeling was, and that was emptiness.
The piece that really stood out to me at the Whitney Biennial was a piece by John Berger. With this installation, he wanted to show his own perspective of these non-romantic connections. He saw them as beautiful and wanted to show a way to document them and show the beauty to other people, not only in the words in the story, but in the way that he set up the exhibition. My first impression was, wow, this is fragile. It was all of these gold cutout words that were soldered onto gold rods. There was a lot to take in. Definitely could not read it all in the time that I was standing there. The use of words and the way that they were displayed and set up, the way that they became art in themselves. The stories that he told, there's things that you can relate to and you can appreciate. And even if you can't relate to it, then you get to see another perspective and it makes you think. So one thing I would like to take from seeing this exhibit is using words in art isn't something you should be afraid of, but absolutely something to be embraced.
And one piece, or more like video, that stuck out to me was by Mira, and she's a Korean American. She calls it night vision, where she used an infrared HD video with holographic pixie glass. And she discusses many political, religious, and cultural topics. So it was like when you walk in, it was like very eerie. You didn't really understand what was happening at first, but once you sit through it all, she talks about diaspora, especially as a Korean American. And you know, I talk about diaspora as well, and you know, we have our difficulties, you know, connecting our culture to ourselves. But I haven't really gotten into that discussion of like, you know, war issues and why diaspora had to have happened.
So I think that overall something that I really looked for in all the paintings, without even realizing it, was like color, texture, and also like what like the process in making each piece was. So because of I was kind of looking at it from that sense, I thought that a piece by Jane Dixon was really impactful. It was her piece called Motel 5. It was located at the Whitney, and it was actually acrylic on felt. You know, acrylic on felt is something that I've never heard about, but just the texture of it was so beautiful. Her technique with acrylic paint was so soft, and because it was on felt, it was just super textured, and it just looked beautiful for my eyes. So it automatically, you know, caught my attention. But it also got me thinking of the surface that it was kind of created on, and it got me thinking about different surfaces that I can work on and the different textures that I can create. So it was expressed that she had a fascination with artificial light, and I think that in this piece you can definitely see it. You know, the motel sign is, you know, gleaming light, and I think that the way she really works with light, she really works, you know, really well with color. I think it was really successful. It was really innovative and, you know, really eye-catching. So on top of, you know, her techniques, but also adding that on the interesting surface that she created on was really impactful. It was said, you know, that she worked on different surfaces, so, you know, that obviously gets me thinking about working on different surfaces and kind of exploring that in that sense.
I didn't really have a particular piece that spoke out to me. It was more as a whole. I would call it like African, but it was more than that. So it's mainly was just called Fictions of Emancipation. It was just like a room filled with, you know, black figures, and it was mainly topics dealing with slavery, talks about our struggles, or, you know, what is considered black representation.
The Met itself was an experience, to say the least. I got lost so many times. It was hard to take everything in while trying to figure out where I was and what I was looking at. Things definitely caught my eye. Pastel colors being used in a way that weren't totally contrasting, but just worked together. A lot of times when you think of art, especially that would be on display, you'd think there'd be a wider variety of color, that you'd see more shadow and definition, but some of the ways that these things blended together, somewhere flat, was something more interesting to look at.
Something that really stuck out to me, and I'm talking about the mannequin pieces with the clothing, just how fashion is art. Fashion is about self-expression and art is about self-expression. To be able to see how art and fashion can intertwine and connect with one another and create a display that is, one, impactful, two, very imaginative, and three, just very alluring, is something that I don't think is spoken about enough.
I was really focused on texture, color, and the process of all these different works. I would really like to explore different mediums, different surfaces, different techniques. I think that would really be fun to, you know, work with. Specifically from the Met, Ronald Lockett's piece, it's called The Enemy Amongst Us. And then also Julie's piece titled Conversion. I thought that both of those pieces, just for the surface itself, really had some interesting techniques that I would love to take away from. Lockett's piece is very much so really focused on texture, on the different surfaces that were included in his piece.
What sticks to me the most was when I went into the American fashion part of the museum. Just the overall posing of how mannequins were set up, dodging, punching, whatever. And it's not a traditional kind of thing. Not things you see in the stores or anything. It was more floating of sorts, different things, positioning.
We got to see a lot of ancient art too. And I gasped when I saw the large Buddha statue. There was so much to see. After a while, I think my brain just stopped processing everything.
I've even started to paint more figures where it's head to toe instead of just head to shoulders. Like, I really don't think about what is on my figure's body. What is on the body and how it's draped on the body is just as important as the figure itself. You can really tell a story through the draping, like you can tell a story through color composition, through lighting composition. And I think fashion is just as important as any other detail that an artist thinks about. And I really hope in the future I'm able to continue to delve into that and see maybe there's a 3D approach I can take into my oil paintings, or a world that I can bring outside of just the 2D and see how the two worlds can collide in that way.
I feel like being a photographer myself and seeing all these positions, the dresses, the outfits and stuff, really had me thinking a lot of how to bring that into my own media.
The entire New York experience, I think, is going to take me months to finish processing. I am thankful for the documentation that I've been taking so that I can look back and see and think about what an experience of art the entire trip has been.
I think that overall, my end goal for my work is to create, a really strong experience. I want you to go out of it feeling something, feeling some type of way. And I think that as soon as I start to bridge those two aspects of my work, like all of these artists have, I think that it could be really, successful and really, powerful. So I think that was just kind of my biggest takeaway from seeing, all of these artists and all of these, different museums, different works from different people. So,
make art where it's still me and it's still my voice. It opens more for everybody else, non-Black as well, non-American as well.